And I'll also be doing a bit of juggling of different screens. So bear with me. As I say, any questions that come up, I've got the chat box open, so do feel free to pop them into the chat as we're going through, and then there will be a moment at the end for you to kind of unmute and ask any questions as well. So first of all, as I said before, thank you very much to everyone for coming along on Wednesday, whether it's morning, afternoon or evening, wherever you are. And welcome to this Oxford TEFL teacher training webinar, New Year Advance Your Career, Leap into 2023 with the Trinity DipTESOL course. So a little bit about myself to start with. My name's Teresa T, most people call me, and I'm one of the Oxford TEFL DipTESOL tutors. I do the introductory course module, and then I'm also involved with some of the teaching practice later in the course. I'm a teacher trainer, obviously, and also I'm a materials writer, and I did my DipTESOL with Oxford TEFL back in 2013, so 10 years ago now. And I think it's a fabulous course, obviously. And also I'm hugely keen on professional development. I founded a local teachers association called TEFL del Sur, and I run a Facebook group called the TEFL Development Hub as well. So I'll be keen for you to ask any questions about professional development and how the Trinity DipTESOL course can help you in that respect. So we've got kind of quite a lot to cover in this webinar. As you can see, we'll kind of go through what the Trinity DipTESOL is, how it can help you, the different components of the course. We'll look very briefly at the differences between the Trinity DipTESOL and the Cambridge Delta. And then at the end, we'll talk a little bit about the dates and prices, etc. So to start with, a little video, just for you to get a brief introduction to who Oxford TEFL are. If you can give me a thumbs up, I think I've got the audio working, but just in case. Oh, my apologies, I think I moved something and stopped it. There we go. So there we go. That is Oxford TEFL teacher training. We had a couple of people joining just as the video was on. Oh. So a little bit about the Oxford TEFL Trinity DipTESOL course. So the Trinity DipTESOL, it is an internationally recognised qualification. Oxford TEFL is one of the leading course providers from around the world. And it's one of the things which is different about the Trinity DipTESOL is that it's a blended course. So part of it you will take online, and then part of it you have the option of either taking it online or face-to-face. And I'll get into that in a little bit more detail in a minute. There is a hugely practical emphasis in the Trinity DipTESOL. So even when you're doing all the studying, all the background reading, looking at all the theory and the research that goes into teaching, it's very much with an emphasis on your teaching, your practice, your environment, and how what you're reading and what you're learning relates to that. Another thing that you'll see is there's a big part of the Trinity DipTESOL is the phonology section, which I absolutely loved when I did the course. And, you know, I think phonology is great. Hang on, I'm just going to see if everyone could just make sure they're on mute, just because there's a little bit of background rattling. So phonology, and I'll explain a little bit more about that as we're going through the session. It's also flexible. Because of this opportunity to study online, there are bits of it that are synchronous and bits of it that are asynchronous. So that gives you the flexibility in terms of working around your teaching schedule. Obviously, it's a professional course and we've got some world-class tutors with us. I'll show you some of the tutors a little bit later in the session. And it's also a very supportive course. You know, all the people who work at Oxford TEFL, as well as being dedicated ELT professionals, they're also wonderful human beings. And so they will be there to help you and support you and to guide you during your DipTESOL journey. And it definitely is transformational as well, because because it just gives you a much deeper understanding of what teaching is, why we do what we do, and through the practical stage, you really put all of that into practice in your lessons. So, you know, it does make you a much better teacher, makes you a much better ELT professional as well. Okay, so why is now the right time to gain this qualification? It's 2023, we're going to leap into the new year. So since COVID, there's been a lot more flexibility around the Trinity DipTESOL with the ability to take parts of it online. However, now that COVID restrictions are being lifted, it does also offer you the opportunity of a bit of travel, because you can take the teaching practice component, which I'll explain in a little bit. You can take that either online with your own students or with students that Oxford TEFL provides, or you also have the opportunity of taking it face-to-face in Barcelona, in Cadiz, in Hong Kong. I think that's it. We'll check as we're going through. Okay. So as I said, you do a blended course, or you can do it fully online. You can teach your own students as well if you want. One thing that I will mention with this is that you have to be very careful about setting up the recording for your or the live streaming for teaching your own students. So although it is an option that we offer, you really do make sure that you've got good Wi-Fi connection, that you've got good recording material, resources, etc., in order for that to be a feasible option. Obviously, we can offer you lots of support and guidance, but you need to provide the resources for that to be able to happen. Which one have I done? Sorry. So teaching your own students, or you can work with students that Oxford TEFL provides. It's also a way of improving your employability. We'll take a look at some of what our graduates have gone on to do in a minute. And also, although there is a structure to the course, there's also huge opportunities in the course for it to be very personalized. So you'll see that part of the course is doing projects, And these allow you to really look at an area of ELT which is interesting for you. Somebody else coming in, there we go. Okay. One other thing to mention is that you might be able to get funding because it's a higher level qualification. Certainly here in Spain, there is the Fundación Tripartita, which if you're working within a school, schools receive funding for their employers, whether they're teachers or other staff. It's available to all sorts of companies, receives funding for them to be able to enhance their careers. So you might be able to see if you're here in Spain working for an academy, if that's an option for you. And possibly if you look into it in other countries as well, it might be an option with it being an internationally recognized qualification. Okay, so as I said, it's a great opportunity to enhance your career. Certainly in terms of getting into teacher training, a Trinity DipTESOL or equivalent is a requirement. Yep, thanks Fiddles for adding that there is government in. Yeah, sometimes there is government funding available and then they stop offering it, but it's always worth just checking to see if there is something available in your country. So teacher trainers, course book writers, obviously having this deeper background to ELT can help you with understanding how to build a syllabus, how to work with sub-skills, how to do, how to make your grammar and vocabulary activities much more user-friendly, etc. You'll also find that quite often in some schools, they require a Trinity DipTESOL or equivalent for directors of studies positions. I believe this is certainly true when you're working for British Council schools or schools which are accredited in that way. They like people to have that higher level qualification to move into management positions. There's also the opportunity of moving into ELT publishing. I'm sure when we come to the list of tutors, you'll recognize that quite a lot of them are published names in ELT as well. And then obviously as well working or advancing your career in your own way if you're looking into building a business for yourself, whether that's opening a school or setting up a one-to-one business, a freelance business on your own. Having the Trinity DipTESOL will give you that background knowledge and that confidence, I think, as well in what you're doing. And of course, conference speaking as well. I know that you don't require a Trinity DipTESOL or equivalent to come to speak at conferences. But again, it gives you that background knowledge. Even if you're doing practical activities, I think being able to balance what you're presenting with why it's good for the students in the classroom will help you to develop if you are already a conference speaker. So I've mentioned a couple of times that it's kind of a blended or a fully online course. Let me just let another couple of people in. So what we mean by that, you'll see that the course is divided into what we call the study phase and the assessment phase. Okay, so the minimum duration to complete both the study phase and the assessment phase is 13 months. So the study phase, this is what you'll be doing online through the Oxford TEFL Moodle. That is 7 months. Okay, that's a timetabled course. We have different modules each week. You'll be working with different tutors. There are assignments. We do teaching practice as part of that as well. That whole phase is 7 months, and that's what it is. It can't be any more or any less. And then when you move into the assessment phase, that takes a minimum of 6 months. Okay, so when we talk about the assessment phase, this is doing the Unit 1 exam, doing the Unit 2 projects, doing the Unit 3 phonology interview, and doing the Unit 4 teaching practice. So over a minimum of 6 months, you would work on those 4 elements once you've finished all of the study phase. As a maximum, Trinity allows up to 3 years. Okay, so once you enroll and you start the course, you have a maximum of 3 years to complete it. 1 second. Okay, so with the blended option, the 7 months study phase is all online. And then you have the option of doing the face-to-face teaching practice. So that would be 4 weeks. You could go to Barcelona, you could go to Cadiz, or you could go to Hong Kong to do that. Okay. And the other option, of course, is that it's 100% online. You do the 7 months study phase online, and then you do your teaching practice online as well. One thing to say is that the Unit 1 exam must be taken in person, although there are centres around the world where you can do that. Okay, so that is one part of the course which has to be taken in person, but everything else can be done fully online if that works best for you. Okay. So, I mean, what will you learn on the course? I learned loads. I mean, I've been teaching for quite a few years. Before I took my DipTESOL, I think I'd been teaching for 10 years. But as I say, it just gave me a much better understanding of why I did the things that I do, the background to all the theories of teaching, and why I use a bit of TPR, and why I use the communicative language approach, and what the lexical approach is. So you'll have a much better understanding of all the kinds of methodology that are involved in English teaching. Also, it really helps to improve your grammatical awareness. You'll see that there's a book on the reading list. I'm just going to hold it up because it's a bit of a monster. A grammar for English language teachers, and this just opens your eyes to the ins and outs of grammar. So you'll definitely come away with a much better understanding of that as well. And as I mentioned before as well, the phonology. I adored the phonology section as part of the DipTESOL. You know, I was using phonology in my lessons, but with it being such a key feature of the teaching practice and of the overall qualification, it really helps you to get a better understanding of the sounds and the suprasegmental features, so the intonation and all the connected speech features and so on. Okay, so yeah, so kind of a mixture of the background and the practical input. I won't go through all of these points. I'll give you a second to read that through, and feel free to pop any questions in the chat. Great. Yep. So I can see we had a question from Kate about the time and location for the exam. Yes, we'll get to that in a minute. And yep, Russell's asked a question which Tim Handley has already answered. 3 years is the maximum. Okay. So I said that we have an expert team of tutors on the course, and we really do. So I won't go through everyone. I'll just mention a couple of folks. So at the top on the right here, we have David Young. He's the course director, and he is fantastic, not only because he's just a fantastic ELT professional, but he's been with Oxford TEFL for 20 plus years. So he's really been a part of Oxford TEFL since the beginning. So he loves what he does. He loves the Trinity DipTESOL, and he loves being able to support other teachers moving forwards in their career. You might recognize some other faces on there as well. Oh, I've skipped ahead there. There we go. Sorry, I was scrolling through the chat and I managed to skip ahead on my expert team of tutors. So Duncan Ford, that you can see there on the second line, he is one of the owners, one of the founders of Oxford TEFL. And so he's very much a key part of of Oxford TEFL as well, and with lots of years of experience. Lindsay next to him, you'll do some fabulous grammar slammers with Lindsay to talk about the nuts and bolts of teaching grammar. Going down to the next line, Andrea is amazing. She organizes all of the teaching practice modules, so she will be able to help you with that. Dan Barber, I think Anthony next to him, he was one of the tutors on my course. And down at the bottom, for example, we've got Sharka. She does the EAP module. So if you're interested in English for academic purposes, she'll be able to help you with that. Okay, I'm just going to pop to the chat. So Kate's question's been answered by Tim. And yeah, Fedors, we're going to have a look at now, in a minute, at the equivalency between the DipTESOL and the Delta, which is coming up. So yes, the DipTESOL, as well as helping you to become a better teacher, it can help you to earn more money, which is always good in the world of ELT. Certainly in terms of working towards those management roles, as we've said, having a DipTESOL will give you more confidence, and some places even require the Trinity DipTESOL or equivalent in order to apply for those roles. Being able to boost your career, so not only working as a teacher, but also perhaps doing some teacher training on the side as a way of earning some extra money. And then, yeah, standing out from the crowd. As if you can look there, you can see that the United Arab Emirates apparently pays very well for ELT professionals. So definitely look at that if you're interested in earning big bucks. And you might even find that the school that you're working at offers you a pay rise. Certainly at Oxford House, which is the language centre part of Oxford TEFL, they offer DipTESOL qualified teachers a better salary. So moving on to Fedos's question. So we have the Trinity board and the Cambridge board. You might be familiar with the level 5 certificate, which is a pre-service qualification. So for people who are just starting their careers as ELT teachers, there's the Trinity DipTESOL Cambridge CELTA. And then when we move up to level 7, this is where we've got the equivalency of the Trinity DipTESOL and the Cambridge Delta. So a little bit about the differences. I won't go through all of this in detail here, but very quickly you can see that in terms of assessment, the Trinity DipTESOL has 4 units and the Cambridge Delta has 3 modules. Okay. So I've mentioned before that there is a huge emphasis on phonology in the Trinity DipTESOL. So this balance between the 4 units and the 3 modules, both have a written exam, both have written assignments, and both have a teaching practice element. But one way in which the Trinity DipTESOL is different is that it has an extra module, an extra unit, purely on phonology. So as part of the assessment phase, you would do a 30-minute phonology interview. So this is something that you don't get on the Cambridge Delta. And within the phonology interview, you talk about an element of phonology that's interesting for you and your learners. You do some transcription, and then there's a discussion about phonology with your students and the wider world of phonology in ELT as well. Okay, so that's kind of one of the main differences. Also, in terms of the assessment, so there's a balance between what's internally and externally assessed. Okay, so when you watch the recording, you can have a look at that in a little more detail. Okay. So I'm trying to keep an eye on the chat as well. I know Tim's all over it. So as I said, there are 4 assessed units as part of the Trinity DipTESOL. Unit 1 is a 3-hour written exam. That might sound scary, but as part of the study phase, we give you lots of opportunity to practice exam questions, and we'll also do some practice exams with you as well. So the The unit 1, it's divided into 3 sections. There is one section which is around grammar and lexis, and then there are 2 longer essay sections. Okay, one of those is on professional development, which really helps you as well if you're looking at getting into those management positions, thinking about continuing professional development. There's a lot of study involved around that. Unit 2. So this is where you get to do these 3 projects. And this, as I mentioned before, this really gives you an opportunity to look at an area or 3 areas of ELT which are particularly interesting for you. We'll give you lots of advice and guidance as to what your projects could be about, but it really is an opportunity for you to go, right, you know, I'm really interested in ELF, you know, English is a lingua franca. Or I'm really interested in, I did mine, for example, on the balance of accuracy and fluency in Trinity Jessie preparation lessons. So it can be something really quite focused, or it can be something, you know, more generalized within the profession. Unit 3, the 30-minute online interview with a Trinity examiner. That's your phonology plus section. And unit 4, this is the teaching practice assessment. This is the unit that assesses your teaching practice. So you will do a total of 5 lessons, 4 of which are observed and assessed internally, meaning that by one of the Oxford TEFL tutors, and your final lesson is observed and assessed by a Trinity moderator. Okay, so this is where you've got the opportunity of perhaps working with your own students, or coming to Barcelona or Cadiz or Hong Kong to do it in person, or doing it online with students that Oxford TEFL prepares. I was looking for a different verb there, I couldn't remember it. And as I said before, all of this can be completed online except for unit 1, which must be done in person as yet. With all the changes, we haven't had any online exams as yet. Is an interesting question from Farouz about whether the DipTESOL is the equivalent of an MA. There have been people that have done both. One thing that people often tend to comment on is the highly practical nature of the DipTESOL. So because you've got this unit 4 where your teaching is observed and assessed, and you know, you really develop those in the classroom skills at that point, some people say, you know, in terms of level, they're equivalent, they're both level 7, but that the DipTESOL is much more practical than an MA. Okay, although in the DipTESOL as well, you do still have this research and essay writing element. Okay, so these are some comments from some of our graduates. Jo is fantastic, she's based up in Barcelona. David Dodgson, he actually wrote, he did some writing on his blog as he was doing his DipTESOL. So there are, you know, lots of people do this. It's a really good opportunity to kind of reflect as you're going through the course. So I'm sure if you kind of look for people's blogs, David Dodgson did one, Ben Crompton, he did his diploma a couple of years ago, or started working towards it a couple of years ago. He did some fantastic blog posts as well, to really give you a background view or a behind the scenes view of the course. As Bortagos says, you know, aware of the things that she was interested in, it allows you to focus on certain elements, but just as well a deeper understanding of the whole of ELT. I've mentioned before the flexibility. As I said, parts of the study phase are synchronous and parts of it are asynchronous. So with the synchronous slots, we offer live lessons, and we try to offer them so that everybody is able to come to at least one of them wherever in the world you're based. So they tend to be kind of, there might be one in a Spanish morning at the end of the morning, and maybe one in a Spanish early afternoon around this sort of time, so that we can try to cater to everyone. We do always record the sessions as well. And I know that in the past, course participants have set up watch groups if they know they aren't able to attend live, and then they get together and watch the session together and have a chat. And it's a really nice way to build connections that way. Rest weeks are also very important on the course, allowing you a bit of a breather from all the reading. These are the weeks when we tend to have the grammar slammers with Lindsay, which are also pretty fun, as I say, learning the ins and outs of English language. And as I mentioned before as well, the tutors are hugely supportive, so they'll always be there to help as well. Okay, we've had another question come in. Oh, that's an interesting question. That I'm afraid I don't know, Alex. So Alex has asked about applying for DOS jobs, Director of Studies jobs in the UK. It may depend on who you're applying to. Generally, the DipTESOL or the Cambridge Delta are accepted because of their level 7 qualification. It may depend on the centre that you're applying to. If they're looking for something much more academic, they might prefer an MA. Okay, so building your network, as I mentioned before, watch parties or attending the live sessions with fellow course trainees. You'll also notice as well that we tend to put you into smaller groups for each module to work on the forum tasks, so that, you know, if we have a group of 30 people, rather than having 30 people commenting on one thread, we might divide you into groups of 5 and work with different people in each module. Also, you'll get to meet some tutors from around the world. And as well, when you come to do the teaching practice, you'll be working with the people who are either with you in person or working with you in the online section. Okay, we also have an online community. We're on Facebook. And so that's a great place as well to meet people and ask their experiences and what they're up to now. In terms of requirements for you to join the course, you need to have at least 2 years full-time teaching experience or the equivalent, you know, if you've been teaching 4 years part-time or 6 years part-time. And that can be with any age group or level or teaching context. So whether you've been working with young learners or whether you've been working with business English students or at a university, any experience is valid. It is useful if you have a previous qualification in ELT, because that really gives you kind of the foundation. Obviously, with the level 7 qualification, we're getting really into the background. So if you haven't come with the basics, you might struggle a little in terms of understanding some of the terminology and things like that. But if you have proof that you have another qualification or that you're able to cope with the course at this level, these are things that we take into account during the interview and application process. You don't need to be working at the time of taking the course. In some respects, it can help because there are a couple of modules where we do ask you to record your students in order to focus on, you know, learner errors or to focus on your teacher talk or something. There are options available in that. And just to say as well that you can be working full-time whilst you're completing the study phase. You know, the idea is with this flexibility, you can take it, you can work on the course during the week at a moment that suits you. One thing I would say is that if you're doing the 4-week intensive unit 4, the teaching practice, then I would suggest you minimize any other things that you have to do during that time. It's a very intense time. Although you kind of think 5 lessons, I could teach 5 lessons in a day. The amount of work that goes into producing the lesson plans, the thinking that goes on around it, the preparation of materials, the writing up after the lesson of your reflections. It is a big process. So you kind of go 5 lessons, But yeah, give yourself time and dedicate time to allowing yourself to do that and to really appreciate the experience as well. So we've got some courses coming up this year. Our next course is starting on the 9th of January. So if anybody's super duper eager to get started, there's still time to apply for that. Our next course will be starting in April, and then we have one starting in the autumn, well, the Northern Hemisphere autumn as well. One thing I would say as well is that if you join the course in January, because it's a 7-month study phase, that does theoretically give you the option of jumping into the teaching practice this coming summer. Okay, so if you're kind of really motivated, you really want to push on ahead and get through things and start getting things done, joining in January means that, you know, by September, you could have finished 2 of the units, and then you could do the unit 1 exam, and then take your time and focus on the unit 2 assignments. And yeah, Russell, the start dates for the next year, they're pretty much similar. We try to have one starting in January, one starting in April, and one starting in October. There was a question before about knowing the dates and the locations of the written exam. So these are the dates that Trinity offers: May, August, and November. And the way that it works is that the stuff that you do during the study phase, so everything that you do with the Oxford TEFL tutors during those 7 months, sounds terrible, but it doesn't count, as in it doesn't count towards your final grade. However, we do use that to see if you are ready to move on to taking the Unit 1 exam. Okay, so before each of these moments, so before May, before August, before November, Tim will have a chat to David, the course director, and they'll discuss who's ready to move on to taking the Unit 1 exam, and Tim will send you through a reminder, and he'll let you know about the dates and the sign-up process for the exam. The Unit 2 projects, it's a much longer process to complete the projects, but they're submitted in March, June, September, or December. The phonology interview and the Unit 4 teaching practice, they're taken together. And there's a lot of flexibility in this, with a lot of it being done online. So, for example, I was recently involved in some face-to-face teaching practice here in Cadiz, and that happened November, December. Okay, we've got teaching practice Unit 4 and Unit 3 happening in January. Well, January moving into February. So there's a lot of flexibility in terms of completing Unit 3 and Unit 4. Course fees, hot topic, sure, everyone wants to know. So the payment is €2,700 if you pay in advance, if you pay in one lump sum, or you also have the opportunity to pay in installments, in which case it's 2,800 euros, sorry. And we can discuss payment options during the application and interview process as well. And as we've mentioned before, check for funding opportunities if it's available, either within your country, within your school. We have a special offer for everyone who's come along today. So if you are interested in taking any of our DipTESOL courses this year, so that's the start date, the 9th of January, 24th of April, or 9th of October, if you enroll by the end of the month, then you get a saving of €50. Use the promo code #webinar50. Okay, make a note of that. Yes, the fee, Stephanie, I think, Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that this fee includes everything. Yeah, Tim will jump to my rescue if I've said that wrong. He's just answering Kate at the moment, but he'll jump onto that question in a minute, Stephanie. Okay. Before I stop for questions, because I'd like to kind of stop screen sharing so I can see folks. If you are interested, here are the details. So you can contact us tsol@oxfordtefl.com, or you can go directly to the website oxfordtefl.com if you are interested in applying. Okay, so I'm going to stop my share. And does anybody have any questions? Feel free to unmute if you do. Yes, Feruz. Oh, nice use of the hands up.
Hello. Thank you for your insightful and informative presentation. I did a CELTA course about like 10 years ago almost, in Poland. And I remember on my CELTA certificate, it says 120 hours of, I don't know, that our allocation should be there. But how about DipTESOL? Like, does it really have an hour thing?
I don't think it does, because with it being level 7, they tend to move into credits because it's at, postgraduate level. So it's worth 60 credits. So for those people who are interested in, using a DipTESOL to take a master's or moving into even higher education, I don't think that there is a set hour because it's such a massive course.
I see. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Feel free to unmute or pop them in the chat. Excellent.
So may I?
Oh,
sorry.
Yeah, sorry, Kate. I was just going to say, jumped into but everything is included in the fee. Oh no, the Trinity fees are not included. So you pay for the Trinity assessments extra. So that was €478 in 2022. Okay, thank you, Tim. Sorry, Kate, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I'm still worried about the proof which you mentioned. I'm not really sure that I understand what kind of proof I can, show, because I'm a linguist and I used to study at university. I have both bachelor's and master's degree, and I used to be a postgraduate student, but I didn't finish, unfortunately. I'm currently working at a language center. I've been teaching for 10 years approximately, but I'm not sure that I have any substantial proof, if you know what I mean. I mean, any certificate. The only thing that I have is the trainer certificate, which I got a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think anything that shows, so it's partly proving that you have experience as a teacher, which come along and kind of say, yeah, I've been teaching for 10 years, that's fine. But also in terms of your ability to cope with the demands of the course. If you mentioned you've got an MA, no worries.
Yeah.
And then having the trainer course, that will obviously set you in good stead as well.
So, and that MA is not supposed to be in the same sphere. It's not the English MA, it's Indian languages. It's linguistics, but other languages.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So like I say, it's more that you're able to cope with a course at this level, because obviously there's essay writing, there's an element of research that you'll be doing. So for someone coming in who hadn't been to university and just kind of fallen and who've been teaching for a while and thought, oh, I'll do a diploma, they might need some extra support, but I think you would be absolutely fine.
So do we need to provide the copy of the diploma or anything like this?
I wouldn't imagine so. If you fill in the application form, or one thing I forgot to mention, if you do fill in an application form, absolutely no obligation. You can go through the application, you can go through the interview process. It's not we won't be hounding you to say, when are you starting? So also it's a good opportunity to ask those questions and check, and you might think, well, maybe next year I might feel more ready. Absolutely.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much.
You're welcome. We've had a couple of questions come in. How could this diploma help me develop as a freelance editor materials writer within the field of ELT? So, as I mentioned before, it gives you the confidence that you know what you're talking about, because you'll be doing all this background reading into methodology, but also there's definitely an element of looking at materials, assessing materials, and considering, you know, with the students, how can the teacher use this in the lesson? So that would help you as well. And then, of course, just making connections. You know, you'll be working with people who are based around the world, your course participant, your peers, and then also working with the tutors and with the careers advice, the careers service as well. We can provide information about, you know, the best routes to take if you're particularly interested in getting into ELT materials. Hope that answers the question. There was another question. If I choose to opt a 13-month course, how many hours would you say we should dedicate weekly to the study phase? So the study phase, the 7-month study phase, that time will kind of be the same for everyone, whether you're deciding to power through and get the course finished in 13 months, or if you're kind of taking it slow and going for the full 3 years. We recommend around 10 hours a week, I think, for the study phase. I've got this webinar head on. Next week I'll be doing the introductory session, and my head will be much more focused on that information. But in terms of doing the background reading, posting a couple of times in the forums, chatting to your peers, maybe having a meetup together, coming to one of the live sessions, it probably works out about 10 hours a week for the study phase for everyone. Obviously, if you want to devote more time to it, you can, but generally 10 hours is the minimum. Okay, Russell.
Yeah, hello. First of all, thank you very much. It's very informative. I was just, you almost answered my question just now, actually. I was, because I'm working more or less full time. Obviously, when I start the Delta course or the DipTESOL course, I'm going to have to start working sort of part time now. And I'm just wondering, like, at the maximum workload, at the point of maximum workload of the course, how many, like, yeah, more or less, how much time does it require a day? I'm asking this because I'm just wondering how much I can combine it with working. You know?
Yep, all good questions, all good questions.
Yeah.
So the way that the study phase works, you work on a different module each week. So for example, 1 week you might be working on reading and writing skills. Another week you might be working on phonology A. Another week you might be working on language A. Okay, so each week will have a different focus.
Kind of like the CELTA, no? And I did the CELTA in Oxford House, so yeah, it's more or less the same, no? Yeah.
We've reeled you in.
yeah, you have really, really, yeah.
And the modules are always released on a Thursday evening. Our thinking with that is then it's kind of Friday in the eastern part of the world. So with that in mind, it means that you've got that first weekend to kind of get a start on the reading, start thinking about what you need to do that week. And then the assignment for each module is in the following Friday. Okay, so in terms of daily allowance, it's got that flexibility that you could say, okay, Monday I've got a really busy teaching day, I can't do anything. No. Tuesday I've got Tuesday morning free, so I'm going to dedicate 2 hours then. So I think one of the things that we talk about a lot at the beginning of the course is around time management and organization, because it is the sort of course that there is that flexibility, but you also need to kind of keep on top of things to not get behind.
Yeah, so I mean, but like at the maximum like workload, it's like what, 10 hours a week if you want to do the flexible version, let's say. No?
Yeah. I mean, we'll give you for each week there'll be some core reading. That might be a chapter or two of a book. But then some people, they'll find a module that really enthralls them and they'll go off on tangents and find lots of different things to read. One other thing that we are very aware of is it's a great opportunity for you to get information from other people, but don't feel the pressure to read everything that everyone shares, because it just wouldn't be possible. All
right. Yeah, great. Thanks.
No worries. Before I go to Feroz, I'm just going to check the chat, and we've had a couple of questions. I think Tim's on the chat anyway. So, yes. So, oh, good question from, I'm sorry if I pronounced your name wrong, Eli? Sorry. So about the kind of students that you would be teaching at Oxford TEFL, well, whether you're doing it in person or in person or online. If they're in person, obviously the students tend to be monolingual, whereas with the online classes, you tend to get multilingual groups, which is really exciting. There would be opportunities to do task-based learning. You know, we've had people in the past who have gone for kind of a pure PPP approach, you know, present, practice, produce. We've had people that have gone for a test, teach, test approach. We've even had people that have used more of a dogme approach. You know, this idea of being very materials light and getting a lot from the students. So it does give you the opportunity to try different teaching methodologies in the online assessments in the teaching practice as well. Would we see them over the whole period of the course to do research with them? Unfortunately not. If you do the teaching practice with Oxford TEFL students, you would see them for those 4 weeks. Although obviously this is something that they take into account, we take into account when we're looking at the learner profiles. So for each of the classes that you work with, you do an analysis of who the students are, what their needs are, etc. And so we appreciate that, you know, we might have rolling intake. You're not so familiar with these students as you would be with a group you've worked with for 9 months. Okay. Question about accommodation. Accommodation, if you do choose to do the in-person teaching practice, would be extra, but again, we can help you with that. The study phase, yes, definitely. So because the study phase is timetabled, you work on a module each week. So that is something that there's kind of less flexibility in terms of completing it. One module, 1 week, a few rest weeks scattered in and about. Okay. Oh, Tim's answered lots of questions. Fantastic. Excellent. Very good. Okay, Pedros, back to you.
Oh, thank you very much for giving me the second chance. You know, as someone who's previously done lots of TESOL, TEFL, and including CELTA course, you know, I saw lots of parallels in that particular slide that you showed about the takeaways by the end of the DipTESOL course. So, you know, I'm just a bit perplexed, like what are the specialties about this course? Because there are lots of practical opportunities in doing some practical TESOL courses. For example, from Arizona State University, which I did a couple of years ago, 150-hour TESOL course. And I did an advanced TEFL course from Ireland. So, you know, I see lots of parallels between all those practical TESOL, TEFL courses and this course. So is it like the diploma part, the only distinguishing part, or is there a big difference between all those TESOL, TEFL courses versus DipTESOL? Thank you.
Oh, that's a good question. So one thing I would say is in terms of accreditation, obviously, you know, courses that you do through Arizona State University, they will be accredited by that university. I feel, I don't want to say for sure, but I feel like Trinity and Cambridge are much more worldly recognized, world renowned in terms of teaching qualifications. So one thing that the Trinity DipTESOL would offer is that piece of paper that you can go around saying, I have an internationally recognized qualification in terms of, you know, getting jobs anywhere in the world. Also, I would say that because it's a level 7 qualification, you know, these are courses that have been designed. There's hugely practical elements, there's background, there's theory, and so I feel as well that they're very rounded courses. And that's not to say that other courses aren't, but you know, they've got a name, they're prestigious courses. Okay, any other questions?
Thank you for your time.
No,
Really
you're
appreciate it.
welcome. Lem.
Hi, Teresa. Thank you again for the webinar. Can I ask you, would you suggest doing some background reading before the beginning of the course? And if so, are there any titles that you would particularly recommend?
Oh, good question. What would I recommend? I mean, if you are going to do the course, this is, as I mentioned before, the Parrot book. It is one of the required courses on the book, and it's pretty thick. And it's not the sort of book that you just want to sit down and read. It's the sort of book that you want to dip in and out of when you kind of go, oh, let me learn about dropped participles or something equally fun. Also, to be honest, the way that the course is set up, the required reading is built into the course. So I would be tempted, like I said before, to look at some blogs of other people that have taken the course, because, you know, these are people that have talked about their experience on the course. These are the people who have really good tips and advice for how to get the best out of it, how to manage their time, you know, tips for extra bits of reading and things like that. So I wouldn't worry too much about kind of trying to jump ahead with the course reading, but use it as an opportunity to look at what other people enjoyed.
Great, thank you.
Oh, and Fran's posted the reading list, which is very handy. Okay, are there any other questions? Okay, Casper, can I choose when to do the exams? Yes, the Unit 1 exam falls together with exams and reports. So, yes, you can choose when to do it, although those are the dates which are set by Trinity. Okay, so Trinity only offers particular days when people around the world sit the exam. So there's not so much flexibility, but for example, say you did the study phase starting January and you finished in July, theoretically you could do the exam in August, but you might think, you know, that's the start of the next academic year for me. I'm going to stop and I'm going to take it in November. So in that respect, there is some flexibility there. Okay, Casper. Okay. Well, if there are any more questions, we've got some people joining and I think they might have got the time wrong, unfortunately. If you have just joined us, or if you joined late, don't worry, we're going to be posting a recording of this session on the website. So you can kind of pause it and read through the slides. And if you do have any questions, feel free to message us at tsol@oxfordtefl.com. Oh, it was lovely to meet you all. Thank you all very much for coming along and joining me on this sunny Wednesday afternoon in Spain. That's it from us for today. Don't forget to use the promo code #webinar50 to get a €50 discount if you enroll for one of our courses by January the 31st. That's for any of the courses, any of the DipTESOL courses in 2023. If you have any other questions, feel free to drop us a line, and hope to see you at some point in the future. Have a lovely day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye. Stephanie, I know you've had a few questions. I think it looks like they're all answered now, but if you do have anything else, do just drop us a line, tsol@oxfordtefl.com. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. I'm going to close the room now and have a lovely rest of the day.